it's Dad, here with another book. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the other ones, but I wanted to read one of the ones that I enjoyed growing up. I remember these books. I don't know if they're still the same, but check out, this is Mr. Tickle. Look at all these other ones. So here's the deal. If you guys like these books, I think they have more at the library, but we're going to give this one a shot. See what it's like. He's got long arms, which makes me think he can tickle anybody from anywhere, but I haven't read this one yet. So, Mr. Tickle by Roger Hargreaves. It was a warm, sunny morning. In his small house on the other side of the forest, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You didn't know that there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Well, there is. Tickles are small and round, and they have arms that stretch and stretch and stretch. Extraordinary long arms. There's Mr. Tickle's house. Mr. Tickle was fast asleep. He was having a dream. It must have been a very funny dream because it made him laugh out loud, and that woke him up. He sat up in the bed, stretched his extraordinary long arms, and yawned. Enormous yawn. Mr. Tickle felt hungry. So do you know what he did? What did he do? He reached out one of his extraordinary long arms, opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen door, reached down the kitchen cupboard, opened the cookie jar, took out a cookie, brought it back upstairs, into the bedroom door, and back to his bed. As you can see, it's very useful indeed having arms as long as Mr. Tickle's. Mr. Tickle munched his cookie. He looked out of the window. Today looks very much like a tickling day, he thought to himself. There he is, getting his cookie. So later that morning, after Mr. Tickle had made his bed and cooked his breakfast, he set off through the forest. As he walked along, he kept his eyes very wide open, looking for somebody to tickle. Looking for anybody to tickle. Oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't tickle me. Eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school. There was nobody around, so reaching his extraordinary long arms up the high window ledge, Mr. Tickle pulled himself and peeked up through the open window. Inside, he could see a classroom. There were children sitting at their desks and a teacher writing on the blackboard. There he goes. He's going to get up there. Mr. Tickle waited a minute and then reached in through the window. Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long arms went right up to the teacher, passed, and then tickled. The teacher jumped in the air and turned around and very quickly to see who was there. But there was nobody there. Look at that goober, Mr. Tickle. Mr. Tickle grinned a mischievous grin. He waited another minute, and then he tickled the teacher again. This time, he kept tickling until the teacher was laughing and saying, "Stop it," over and over again. All the children were laughing, too, at such a funny sight. There was a terrible pandemonium. They think it's funny. Silly kids. Eventually, Mr. Tickle thought he had had enough fun, so he gave the teacher one more tickle for good luck, and then very quietly brought his arm back through the open window. Chuckling to himself, he jumped down from the window, leaving the poor teacher to explain what it was all about, which of course he couldn't. Then Mr. Tickle went to town. And what a day Mr. Tickle had. He tickled a policeman on traffic duty in the middle of the town. It caused an enormous traffic jam. He tickled the greengrocer just as he was piling up apples neatly in the shop window. The greengrocer fell over backwards and the apples rolled all over the shop. At the railroad station, the guard was about to wave his flag for the train to leave. As he lifted his arm in the air, Mr. Tickle tickled him. And every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr. Tickle tickled him until the train was 10 minutes late leaving the station, and all the passengers were furious. That day, Mr. Tickle tickled everybody. He tickled the doctor. He tickled the butcher. He tickled Easton. He tickled Maddie. Tickled Mommy. He tickled Catcher. He even tickled old Mr. Stamp, the postman, who dropped all the letters into a puddle. He tickled Grandma and Papa. Then Mr. Tickle went home. Sitting in his armchair in his small house on the other side of the forest, he laughed and laughed every time he thought about all the people he tickled. Mr. Tickle is pretty proud of himself. So, if you are in any way ticklish, beware of Mr. Tickle and those extraordinary long arms. Just think, perhaps he's somewhere around at this very moment while you're reading this book, Mommy. Do you see Mr. Tickle? Big old long arms. Perhaps that extraordinary long arm of his is already creeping up the door to this room. Perhaps it's opening the door and coming into the room. Perhaps before you know what is happening, you will be really and truly tickled! I don't know if anyone was around to tickle you, but I bet you're super scared of Mr. Tickle now because he can tickle you at any moment. That Mr. Tickle. Maybe next time we will learn about Mr. Greedy, Mr. Happy, Mr. Nosy, Mr. Sneeze, Mr. Bump, Mr. Snow, Mr. Messy, Mr. Topsy-Turvy. There's a lot of misters. No misses, though. No misses. Sorry, Maddie. We'll have to read another princess book. You guys have a great day. I love you.